Hey guys, what's up? Unrested back for another video. Today we are talking about when love goes wrong in Japan. These are just kind of some goofy stories about either obsession, loving, liking, crushing on, or being infatuated with somebody while you're also in Japan. Not all these stories have to do with me personally, but are either observations by me, or stories told to me, or things I witnessed firsthand, either at the job or off the job. And some of these are a little upsetting, some of them are kind of funny, and some of them will just kind of have you shaking your head, asking, WTH, right? Okay, so we're going to start first with when you move to Japan and you try to make a long distance relationship work. That can go very wrong because Japan is 12,000 miles, I think, away from America. So maybe if you had a love life there in America, it doesn't always transfer well to keep it going that far away in a totally different time zone. That's over 13 to 14 hours difference. Communicating becomes difficult, and that's kind of what happened with one of my first suite mates I had, Chris. He had a relationship right before leaving America. Let's see, I was 27 at the time when I got to Japan. I think he was a little bit younger than me at 25. And he had had a 2 or 3 year relationship going with a girlfriend when he left. And he had been very acutely tuned in to making sure he matched perfect times to call up and talk to his GF constantly. He saw this as a very short term thing living in Japan and couldn't wait to head back and see her because he was very much in love. Nothing wrong with that. Unfortunately, his girlfriend at the time, I think, took this as a chance to break things off because I think we were only there for like 3 days in Japan. We had just landed, gotten there, and his girlfriend broke up with him. And this put poor Chris into kind of a spiral. When we got there, I remember we all did not have a lot of money because we had to get our first apartment, buy all of our first amenities, and start all different types of services up like cell phone, internet, gas, electric, all that. So we were trying to pinch every penny we could. I personally did not go out with people every night to drink who wanted to go out to drink every night because I knew that would cost me a ton. And Chris, I remember, found me right away and told me, like, hey, I think it's cool that you don't go out drinking every night and partying. I'm going to stick with you because I also don't want to get into drinking and everything while I'm here. So, let's chill. Let's, hang out at the gym. Let's, find other ways that we can spend less money night by night. And I was like, yeah, that's cool, man, whatever. And then probably by like the fifth night that we were there, Chris was like, that's it. I'm sick of it. I'm going out drinking. And that's what he did. He was having a rough time. And look, there's nothing wrong with blowing off a little bit of steam when you're trying to get over a rough breakup. And he went to town with everybody. And I got a call from his friend David. He was like, hey, can you guys come meet us up and help me get back to the apartment with Chris because he's kind of having a bit of a meltdown. And I said, yeah, sure, that's fine. Everything's like walking distance in Japan. Maybe at most you might have to use a bike, but for the most part, all the clubs, everything you were going to, the dance places, the music places, the DJ sets, all of it's like, I mean, less than a mile from your house. You're in the heart of the city. It's like being in New York, pretty much. Walk downstairs, head on out, get there, and Chris won't move from the spot that he's sitting down at, pouting. And he's just, really in a funk, a sort of drunk funk about losing his girlfriend. He's talking about her nonstop, saying, like, can't believe she broke up with me, so messed up. I don't know what I'm going to do. I thought we had something really special. And it's like, we've all been there, man. We've all had our heart broken. And you can't dog a guy when he's down like this. You yourself realize because you're out of whatever relationship you used to be in, or you're in between relationships, or you're in a solid relationship at the time. Don't feel the disheartened feel that a person who had just been broken up with feels. You only feel that in like the first, what, 3 months to 1 year after breaking up, depending on how long you were together. So while you understand, while you feel for them, you also realize life must go on, and you're going to try and help them do that. So you're like, all right, Chris, let's get back to the apartment. Let's sober up a little. We can talk about this there. And he's like, fine. And stomps back to the apartment. On the way, they stop at the convenience. Chris picks up another case of drinks. You know, alcohol sold 24/7 in Japan. You can drink on the street. So, of course, he cracks one open on the way home. And we get him back to the apartment. He's, as I said, my suite mate, which means his apartment is connected to my apartment with a door between them. And he pretty much conks out finally, and we think, okay, we got him to bed. Everything's going to be fine. Now we can end the night too. David goes to his apartment, I go to my apartment. We all go to our separate rooms, and we crash for the night, only to hear at 1 a.m. someone angrily yelling in the hallway of our apartment complex. And the way our apartment complex worked, it was a pretty big one. I think it was 26 floors tall. So it's a decent size apartment building. We are up on floor 13, I believe. And yeah, and there's no unlucky thing about 13 in Japan. So yes, there is a 13th floor. And the way it works is that you've got like kind of the square of apartments. The hallway is an open banister hallway. You can see all the way down to the bottom. You know, obviously you don't want to climb over that banister because it would be the quickest and swiftest way to expedite your travel to the bottom. You would not want to do that because you would die. You use the elevator, of course, or stairs. If you want to use the stairs, though, that's going to be quite a workout. Chris is out there yelling in the hallway at another suite mate who's connected to his apartment and had been kind of obnoxious since we had gotten there. This guy, Todd, pretty much, I don't know what his deal was. He was 36 years old. He had just recently been divorced. He hated everything about life. He also thought he was in charge of all of us because we were like 10 years younger than him. And would try to boss us around. For example, we would borrow stuff from each other's apartments. Like someone would borrow butter and then pay for the butter to be back. And then someone would borrow sugar and pay for the sugar to be back. We'd switch all different types of stuff. And we had that door, like I said, that connected both of our suites. And we would go through there and just say hi or see what the other person was doing. And I remember one day, it was I went through there and I was talking to one of his roommates, Bob. And while I'm talking to him, Todd storms out of his room and he's like, "Why did you not knock?" And I'm like, "I'm sorry, knock where?" And he's like, "You didn't knock on the door to come in here." And I was like, the suite door was already open and Bob was already in here playing video games. Like, we're literally like talking to each other from across the room. I didn't think I needed to close the door, knock, and then open the door back up again. And he'd be like, "Well, next time you need to do that." And like, he took it really seriously. It's like, okay, I mean, Todd, you come over to our suite all the time. You don't close the door, knock, and then ask to come in. You also come in and borrow butter and sugar and anything like that. Like, we'd been doing this for like a week solid now. I think it was pretty confirmed that there wasn't like knocking and closing the door, and we just come in and out. I mean, like, we're talking like in the middle of the day. There was no trust issues or anything like that. No one had stolen anything. We had been getting along pretty awesome, and actually it was kind of nice that our suites were connected because it felt like we had a bigger apartment. But this is just like an example of what this guy Todd would do. He would just like find reasons to boss you around or yell at you. He was a real creep. I was glad he didn't live in my apartment. I'm glad he was in the adjacent. Actually, to be honest, I wish he didn't live in the adjacent apartment. So we hear Chris out in the hallway having a meltdown because he's broken up about his girlfriend, and he's decided to take this out on Todd. Now, Chris is a good 6'5". He's a pretty giant guy, bodybuilder type, big gym rat, And he's screaming at this guy, Todd, 36 years old, shorter than me by about 3 or 4 inches. So we're talking like 5'7", 5'6", nothing wrong with that. But when it comes to a 5'6" guy against a guy who's the reverse numbers of 6'5", something bad could go down. He's yelling at Todd. He's like, Todd, I can't stand you. You're the worst roommate I've ever had. And if I could right now, I'd pick you up and throw you off the edge of this hallway. And you're like, oh, well, that wouldn't be good because he would die. It's 13 floors down. Anybody getting tossed over that banister is getting a quick ticket to death. And so we're thinking about running out there. I know Dave said the next day, he's like, I don't know if I should run out there and break things up. I don't know if I was going to run out there and escalate things. Me too. But I did finally hear Todd throw some curse words back, slam the door, and then go inside to his own place. The next morning, I'm woken up by Chris, and I'm like, oh, hey, I heard that little fight you guys had last night. Is everything okay? And he's like, no, it's not. And I'm just like, what? I'm sorry, what happened? He said, I can't believe it. This morning I wake up and there's like this big weight on my chest, and I look up and Todd is on top of me. He's kneeling over me and he has one of the kitchen knives to my throat. And he said, if I ever threaten him like that again, he's going to slice my throat open. And I'm just like, oh my God, I live next to two psychopaths. This is awesome. So I'm like, oh, what are you gonna do, dude? Like, what? This is not a good situation. You need to talk to somebody at Nova, because we were pretty much like, they chose where we lived in these apartments. They pretty much chose our apartments ahead of time and put us in rooms. Nova was literally like across the street, and I was like, you need to go talk to management and tell them that your life's been threatened, but you also need to realize he could go and do the same thing because you threatened his life. You guys are both idiots and in a bad situation now. I would suggest both of you ask for a room transfer. So pretty much what happens is he goes there, he reports his side of it. Todd goes in and he reports his side. Of course, totally different stories. One says like, I was just standing there in the hallway and then he took a knife and held it to my throat. And the other guy's like, I was just being a genuinely nice guy and he threatened to throw me off the hallway. Both are in the wrong here. Like I said, and this is, both of them were drunk at the time. Both of them, alcohol got in the way. And this was all over a breakup because Chris decided to take his anger out on Todd. Todd, not the nicest guy, kind of a huge jerk, as I explained. Probably didn't need to be threatened to be thrown off the hallway, though. So luckily, Nova ends up, in a week, finally, moving these two to separate single-room apartments away from each other. Meanwhile, that whole week, I'm like looking both ways before I exit my apartment, as I neither want to be stabbed or thrown off the side of the banister 13 floors down. Not a fun time. Next up, we got two things about blonde-haired people. Blonde hair, blue eyes in Japan is rare. Obviously, not a lot of blonde hair, blue eyed Japanese people being born in Japan. So, if you have blonde hair and blue eyes, you can sometimes end up getting a lot of attention, maybe more attention than you want. We had one friend named Kendall who, every time she would go onto the subway, random salarymen, or just, I guess, creepers in general, not saying all salarymen are creepers, but this did tend to happen quite a lot from the salaryman typecast genre person. They would write a note and hand it to her, and it would be a oddly worded English note, sometimes though in Japanese too, about how they had fallen in love with her while being on the train and wanted to know if she wanted to get married. She never took up any of these proposals. She was a bit creeped out and eventually left to go back to New Zealand. She was not having a fun time in Japan with those letters being given to her every day. And every day she'd bring one home. The reason I know is because I eventually ended up dating her friend for a while. And when I would come to her apartment to hang out, Kendall would reveal these notes. She'd be like, look at this one I got today from a salaryman. And be like this poorly worded English letter like, I am love you. You is want marry with me? And you're just like, oh no. That's no good. And the other one I had was another blonde friend. This is a guy. He had curly blonde hair and blue eyes. His name was Robert. And Robert did not like working at Nova because every time he got a man to man lesson, and when you say man to man, it pretty much means one to one lesson, when he would get a lot of housewives or young college girls, they would not be able to do the lesson. They were too obsessed with what Robert looked like. To you and me, he looked like the average kind of skinny, wafy kind of guy with curly blonde hair and blue eyes, and you'd be like, okay, this is just my friend Robert, whatever. Apparently for him, there was multiple times where the lesson, as soon as the person attending the lesson saw who he was, and this was through webcam, so they're not face to face, it's not too personal. But as soon as their computer would flip on and they would see that Robert was their teacher, they would be like, oh, tension, tension. And if you're wondering what tension means, angel. They thought Robert was an angel. And they would ask him, you are angel? Angel? Oh, you are angel boy. They were like obsessed with this guy, that he looked like an angel. In a way, he did look very cherubic. Is that a word? Very angelic, because he had the blonde hair and the blue eyes. And he could not get through the lesson without them asking all kinds of personal questions, because they wanted to get to know the curly blonde hair, blue eye guy. And he had such a problem with it, he quit Nova and would no longer do teaching anymore. I think he found a job in kindergarten teaching, where little kids don't care what you look like. They just want to have fun, play, and maybe learn 3 or 4 words of English every day. Him working in the grind factory of Nova, where you're given tons of students every hour, was becoming frustrating with him, because he could not get through the lesson without being asked a bunch of personal stuff. Some marriage proposals, yes, being asked out on a date, all different types of stuff. He was kind of getting harassed in the opposite way that my friend Kendall was, and it was making him very pissed off. Okay, next up, okay, 2 personal stories for me. One was, there was a girl who I saw on the train one day, and she was reading an English book, so I knew she spoke English. And every day she would like stare at me, and I thought like, oh, she's kind of cute. Maybe I should ask her out just to see what she's doing. And my very last day that I was going to ride this train, I was like, you know what? I'm going to ask her out on a date, and if she says no, fine, whatever. This is the last day I ride this train for the job that I was going to. I can deal with the rejection because I don't have to see her anymore. So I go up to her and try to talk to her, and before I can even talk to her, she hands me a note, and I'm like, okay. I open it up, and it's like, hi, you are very handsome. I've wanted to ask you out on a date for a long time. Will you go out on a date with me? The English is written pretty good and everything, and I'm like, oh wow, this is kind of like almost destiny. I was about to ask this girl out, and she handed me a note asking me out. This is crazy. So I said, yeah, of course, yeah, I want to go out on a date with you. Let's exchange numbers and everything. And so I explained to her, like, this is my last day. I was just going to take my chance on asking you out. And here's my phone number. I'm super stoked. I'm like, this is going to be an awesome weekend. We're just going to go get something to eat, maybe go to a sushi place or something like that. I can get to finally know this girl. I know she speaks English because I saw her reading English books on the train. Totally stoked, totally excited. The date comes around, and the day of the date, I meet her. She looks great. We're about to have some fun, go eat. But first, she hands me a card. I'm like, oh wow, she's already handed me a note before when she asked me out. I wonder what this card is about. And I look at this card, and it's really handcrafted. Like, she put a lot of work into this, and it was like, Happy Date Scott. That's what it says on the front cover. And she's like cut these letters out from construction paper and made this whole thing. She's about my same age, 28, 27 at the time. And I'm like, oh, this is okay. This is interesting. So we're walking down the street trying to get to the restaurant we're headed to in Dotonbori or Shinsaibashi, whatever area we were in at the time. And when I get it open, there is pictures of me in there. And not just pictures of me, but pictures that have been printed out, cut out perfectly, and pictures of her. And she's cut them out and printed them perfectly. And we've been put side to side in these pictures that she's cut out, and we're doing things like getting married. Like she's like put me into like a tuxedo, like cut paper out to like make it look like I'm in a tuxedo, and then cut paper out and put her in like a wedding dress. There's another one where we're like hanging out at a fancy restaurant and we're drinking champagne. And I'm just right now my brain's kind of reeling, like how has she got pictures, like what are these pictures? So I've never shared any pictures with her. I've never, you know, contacted her before that day that I asked her out on the train. And during that time, she has somehow found multiple pictures of me online, printed them out, cut them out, and put them next to pictures of her printed out and cut out. And these are all her like future ideas of how our relationship is going to work. And the card's like, I'm so happy I found you. I think we were destined to be together. I can't wait to see where our future takes us. And I look forward to being with you forever. And I'm just kind of like, whoa, what? Like, I want to just go eat sushi with you tonight. That's it. Like, you know, I don't think we even have a movie planned or anything like that. Like, I just wanted to converse with you to see what kind of person you were. So we do that. We go to the sushi restaurant. The whole time, this card's in the back of my mind, and she's like, "So, do we want to go back to your place after this?" And I'm just kind of like, "No, no. I usually turn in early for the night. It's like 9 o'clock, so I'm gonna like, you know, head to bed. I probably got like a private lesson in the morning, so yeah, I don't really have time to hang out later tonight. But like, it was awesome eating sushi here with you and just talking." She mostly didn't have a lot to talk about. We went over some of the classics in English literature, Dostoevsky's Crime and Punishment, Pride and Prejudice, you know, the classics, Grapes of Wrath, and that's what we spoke about on the date. And then every once in a while, she'd try to bring up the conversation of marriage. She'd be like, "So who do you see yourself marrying in the future?" I'm like, "I don't know. I haven't really been thinking about that recently. That hasn't been coming up on my mind." She'd be like, "What? Like, have you thought about kids and stuff like that?" I'm like, "No, not during a date where I'm just eating sushi with you." And you know, I was ready for that date to end. I was like, "Yikes! This is a little bit too much for my first date." Headed back home. I kept this card and I just like could not believe. I like, you know, I called up my friend. I had a friend named John at the time, and I called him up. I'm like, "Is this normal? Like, have you ever had this happen on a date here in Japan? Someone gives you a card with like all this stuff they're predicting for the future after printing out pictures of you and putting them next to their pictures that they printed." And he's like, "No, dude, that's not like a typical Japanese thing. That's just like very unique behavior," is the best way he could put it to be nice and PC. That's not a normal thing. And I was just like, okay, yeah, because like this, I didn't expect this girl to do all this. Like, you know, very nice job, good arts and crafts. You're very talented with printing out pictures and cutting them out and putting them next to each other and attempting to predict my future. Sadly, that did not work out. Still, to the day that I got married to my wife now, I had kept that card because I just was like shocked. Like, the card just shocked me so much. I just didn't know what to do with it. I just kept it forever. And I told my wife the story one time about it, and she's like, "We have got to find that card. That is hilarious." And one day going through like an old album of pictures I had, I found the card wedged between the pictures, and I showed her, and she just like could not stop laughing. She thought this was the funniest thing ever. And she's like, "Why didn't you marry her?" I was like, I don't marry anybody on the first date. That's not really my modus operandi. I like to date a little bit longer than one day. So that was a weird one for me. I did have another date when I was, you know, just early to Japan, 27. I dated this 30-year-old girl, and on the first date, she did actually like propose to me, like ask me to get married after the first date. And we had literally only just dated for like hours. And after we finished eating dinner, I think we went to like a yakiniku place. And she's like, "Scott, I've got to talk to you about something on the way home." And I'm just like, "Oh, all right." And she's like, "It's super important. And I don't know how you're going to feel about this." And I was like, "Oh, man, we can talk about anything. Like, I'm an open book. You can talk to me about anything you want, personal stuff, whatever." She's like, "I want to marry you. And I'm going on this date right now because I think this is a good chance for me to meet the person who I'm going to spend the rest of my life with." And I'm like, "On the first date? Like, really?" So, like, and I know some people are probably like, why would this happen on the first date? So like there is, during the time where I was first getting to Japan, 2007, 2008, there still was this whole sense of like Christmas cake syndrome, as they call it in Japan. And when they say Christmas cake syndrome, it's like Christmas cake is usually given to somebody. We usually call it fruit cake in America, but they call it Christmas cake in Japan. And if you give somebody that fruit cake and they don't eat it during Christmas, then it's put on the shelf inside of that tin can, and it's never opened until way later. And people remember, oh yeah, we got a Christmas cake. Now it's gone bad. What do? We toss it out. So it was a huge waste of Christmas cake. So they would call this Christmas cake syndrome. I did not come up with this analogy. This is literally a thing in Japan where they're like, oh, she is a Christmas cake syndrome. And they feel like that same analogy happens to women in Japan at the age of 25. This is not currently a big topic anymore in Japan. This is, 2007, 2008, many years ago, where a girl would really believe that she was like useless or worthless for marriage after the age of 25, which is sad because I met my actual wife that I decided to marry when she was 36, and I think I was 30 at the time. So I don't feel like I don't feel like a woman should have to rush into being married at 25. In fact, I implore a lot of my friends who are younger than me that you should at least wait till like 30, 35 to really think about who you're marrying, because this is the rest of your life. But there was a time in Japan where women really did believe at the age of 25, if you weren't married by that point, then you were kind of like Christmas cake. You were, they were going to get thrown out. They were past the point of being eaten. And that, sad but true, but also kind of scary because I don't want to marry you after the first date. You know what I mean? Kind of how love went wrong for me. One last story before I end this video was the man who slept with too many. Not a kid-friendly story, so any little ears in the room, go ahead and take them out. I just mean take them out of the room, all right? There was a job I started at a place called Pigeon Hearts. Wonderful name for a place to take care of little kids, Pigeon Hearts. And they're like, okay, hey, just so you know, like, this is your first day. You can't hang out with any of the students or parents outside of school. And I was like, yeah, I'm not interested in ever hanging out with any parents or students outside of school. That seems completely unprofessional to me. Why would I do that? And they're like, okay, I'm really glad you said that you'll never hang out with parents or students, because our last teacher, but that's just kind of why he's not here anymore. He couldn't stop himself from doing that. And I'm like, what do you mean he couldn't stop himself from doing that? And they're like, well, every time moms would come to pick up their kids here from this kindergarten, he would start to flirt with them. And eventually he slept with almost every single mom in his class. And I was like, what? Like, like sirens are going off in my head. Like, who does that? Like, what? Like, that's insanity. So, this is a good reverse story. Now I'm telling you how gaijin can also handle love incorrectly in Japan. And so apparently this guy, every time a mom would come to pick up their kid, which is very common in Japan, moms usually drop off and pick up the kids that go to kindergarten, preschool, hoikuen, yochien, whatever. He would apparently talk them up and eventually work his way into sleeping with them. And he did this with multiple moms until one day he slept with one mom too many. And apparently as he was leaving to go to the train station and finish work for the day, he was confronted by a father in the parking lot. And the father, of course, wanted to know why he had slept with his wife. And the guy kind of tried to laugh it off. It's very rare to see Japanese people get into an extremely enraged state. And that's what this father was in, and rightfully so. I can understand his anger. I don't condone what he did next, but I can understand why someone would be angry that you slept with their wife. I think that's verifiably okay. And that's what this guy was pissed off about. Why are you sleeping with my wife? And the guy tried to laugh it off, the guy who was the teacher. Apparently, he was a lot taller than this guy. He thought, like, whatever, I'm not going to be intimidated by this guy. I'll sleep with whoever I want. And this guy was not having it. He was like, no, wait, stop trying to get to your train. Tell me why you slept with my wife. And the guy was just like, dude, just chill. Like, it's no big deal. maybe you should have treated her better or something like that. Some cocky response or something like that. And this guy was not to be messed with, this father. And he was like, okay, so you're just gonna be an asshole. And he socked this guy so hard in the face that apparently it knocked him out cold in the parking lot. And like ambulances had to be called, the police had to be called. It was a huge, disgrace for the kindergarten because they had to explain to the police and the ambulance people and everybody who had to come investigate this why exactly a teacher of theirs from another country was lying motionless in the parking lot and had a bruised and bloody face in front of a kindergarten. Not a good look for a kid's place. And so they were very hopeful that I too would not be interested in dating every single mom in the class. And to this day, I can safely say I did not date any students' mothers because that is insanely crass, unprofessional, and quite frankly, kind of gross. Like, I want to look at my students as just students. I'm not interested in starting anything beyond a relationship like that, student to teacher. To date the moms of your students, how creepy. Like, what the hell is going through your mind that you think that that's okay? And obviously it's not, because you can end up face down in a parking lot bleeding out while an angry father stands over you shouting, and have the police and ambulance called. And then you lose your job after that because you've disgraced the company. They have lost face. So I did have one more story about a gaijin couple who were doing a channel in Japan. They no longer are. And they went through a messy divorce. And they went through it live on YouTube. And I feel like that's kind of its own separate story I should save for the next video. So that's what I'm going to do for now. I'm going to save that one for the next video and make it the entire video, I think. And it's probably a group you guys may even know. I don't know if you've ever heard of Eat Your Kimchi or Eat Your Sushi. They were super famous back in the day. And they eventually moved their whole channel over to Japan. And that's when they went through a messy divorce. You guys may have seen that go down. You may not have. A lot of it's erased from the internet now, but I was kind of right at the forefront of things as I watched it all fall apart. I'll save that for the next video. We'll talk more in depth about it. How about you guys? Have you ever had any weird love stories, any weird date stories, any things that got too personal too quick? Let me know in the comments below. I'd love to hear your own wacky date stories. If you've been to Japan and had a wacky date story, I'd love to hear that too. Love can go wrong when you move to Japan. It can go wrong in any country, but these are some of the craziest ones that happened to both me, my friends, and some acquaintances while I was in the Big Red Dot. Until next time, I hope you've enjoyed this video. If you would like to see more videos, and this was not enough for you, I highly encourage you to become a member. Becoming a member is only $1.90 a month, and you get one extra video every single week. We are up to like 8 videos. Some of them get very personal if you want a more personal touch. We talked about the downfall of J-vlogging in the last video, which got really personal. Had something that I'd only want to keep in a private video. So if you want to learn some of those juicy details, enroll. We do have quite a few members now. It seems like every week I get 3 more members, and I want to thank them right now. Harry Richardson, my newest member. Citrus, thank you. Steve Ring. Capybara Daimyo. Fat Jaskins. Sprinkly Donut. Yodaru. Luna Incola. Ricardo Contreras. Unaloki. Slayer Duck. Blind Man Travels. Jonah Slocum. Ida Q. Ice Cold. Reinhard or Die Trying. Trek Nick. I Am Sandpaper. Aaron Spooner. Andre Sanchez, and Smile Kita 13. Guys, thank you so much for your support. You're the ones keeping this channel going and keeping the lights on in my tiny little YouTube room here full of pictures. You're keeping me in drawing paper so I can fill these walls with my drawings. And guys, just thank you for your support, your comments. Last video did amazing. I can't believe it when I break 1,000+ views, because my channel is very small at this point and not a lot of people are still around watching. If you share, if you like, if you comment, thumbs up, thumbs down, it helps the channel a ton. Especially those of you who share. I saw last month I had 13 different shares from my videos. Guys, if you're sharing my videos on another site, you are a godsend to me and my channel. I cannot thank you enough. Until next time, I hope you have a great weekend, and I'll talk to you again real soon.